Hey, this is Pastor Bunjee Garrett, and I want to take some time today to present you with another word of encouragement. Well, here we go. It appears to be official. The United States of America no longer has a defensible southern border. Now, in case you haven't heard, it was just yesterday, Monday the 22nd. That's when the U.S. Supreme Court granted Biden's emergency request, which now allows federal Border Patrol agents to remove the razor wire that the Texas National Guard installed, in an attempt to prevent illegal border crossings. Now, before we consider the implications of this Supreme Court ruling, I want to back up. I want to consider the court case at hand. And it was last September. That's when federal border agents were caught on camera helping migrants to illegally cross the border. And they did this by using wire cutters and other tools to remove the razor wire, which was installed by the Texas National Guard. It's for this reason that Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, he decided to file a federal lawsuit which would prevent U.S. border officials from removing these border barriers. Well, after filing that federal lawsuit, that's when Judge Elia Moses, who serves as the chief judge for the U.S. Western District of Texas, she issued a temporary order on October the 30th, which barred the removal of the razor wire, well, except for in cases of emergency. Judge Moses then went on to reverse her position because, it's a woman's right to change their mind, am I right? But seriously, after authorizing the federal government to then continue cutting the wire in November, it was then moved to the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. That happened in December when that court decided to prohibit agents from cutting the border wire. Well, then on Tuesday, January the 2nd, the Biden administration filed an emergency appeal with the U.S. Supreme Court, which would then allow Border Patrol agents to remove the razor wire installed on the Texas-Mexico border. Well, it was yesterday when 5 of our justices there on the Supreme Court decided to grant Biden's emergency request, thereby allowing Border Patrol agents to remove those border barriers which were installed by the state of Texas. Now, I'm not surprised by the votes of the open border leftists on our Supreme Court, like Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson, the gal that doesn't know how to define what a woman is. I'm not surprised by their votes. And I'm also not shocked to learn that Chief Justice John Roberts sided with the Biden administration. He often does. But I was a little surprised to learn that Justice Amy Coney Barrett stood with the leftists who have effectively decided to defend the open border policies of the Biden regime. Now, just to be clear, listen, I'm not anti-immigration, and I love how American capitalism has blessed those who come here legally. And I love how migrants who want to experience the American dream can step in line and go through the proper processes. And I'm also all for common sense immigration reform, which would streamline this entire process. And yet at the same time, I also believe that those who serve in the 3 branches of our government ought to fulfill their sworn oath, which includes the constitutional defense of our nation's borders. Just to be clear, those who serve in the executive and the legislative and the judicial branches of our government, they've sworn to protect the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And I want you to think about that for a moment, because how can we identify and address the issue of foreign enemies if our government is failing to vet those who are illegally entering our nation? We should also ask, how can these same leaders fulfill their sworn oath to defend the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, while simultaneously seeking the right to remove the border barriers that border states have put in place for this very purpose? Not only that, but we should also ask, how can the Supreme Court stay true to their sworn oath while granting the federal government the right to remove border barriers under the claims that this is all an emergency situation? Well, what's the emergency? What's the emergency that the Biden administration is talking about? Are they concerned that this might slow down the flow of fentanyl into our country? Are they worried that child trafficking operations might be disrupted? Listen, it's the job of the federal government to protect our nation's borders. And according to the oath that they swore upon taking office, the federal government has agreed to do the best they can to stop the illegal entry of people, weapons, drugs, and contraband. Now listen, When it comes to American citizens jumping on a national flight, Homeland Security loves to treat us like criminals who must be thoroughly examined. And if a person tries to board a plane without going through the proper checkpoints, well, you better believe that the authorities are going to haul that person off in handcuffs. Well, that being the case, why is the Biden administration then cutting razor wire there at the border? The razor wire which forces migrants to enter the U.S. through the proper port of entry. Why are they cutting those razor wires? And why did 5 justices on the Supreme Court just grant the federal government with the emergency right to remove that razor wire, thereby allowing more migrants to more easily enter Texas without going through the proper port of entry? As we consider the oath taken by the justices of our Supreme Court, I must insist that the decision that those 5 justices just made yesterday, it's a dereliction of their sworn duty to defend the United States against all foreign enemies. Not only that, but listen, the decision of those 5 justices has effectively set the precedent which will now result in the removal of all border barriers. And seeing how this administration has already allowed way more than 10 million migrants to enter our country under bogus asylum claims, well, you better believe that we're about to watch an unprecedented flood of illegal immigration as immigrants pour across our country's southern border as the Biden regime continues to bankrupt our country. Now, with this as the goal, Biden's press secretary tried to gaslight us by assuring us that, no, the razor wire is doing more harm than good. Here's how she explained it just yesterday when she declared this, and I quote, "Governor Abbott's razor wire does not prevent non-citizens from unlawfully crossing. That's not what it does." Oh, okay, so the razor wire doesn't work. So what's the problem? What's the problem with the installation of it if it doesn't work? Well, according to her, the razor wire, it might hurt the feds who were sent to the border in order to help the migrants enter Texas illegally. Yeah, it might hurt the border agents. Here's how she explains it, and I quote, "If anything, it puts the lives of the Border Patrol at risk. It puts them in danger. That's what the razor wire does." Okay, so Abbott wants to hurt the Border Patrol agents. Listen, Biden's press secretary wants us to believe that the razor wire is putting the Border Patrol agents' lives at risk. And that's interesting, and especially as we consider how federal prisons and military bases both use razor wire fences in order to secure the perimeter of their grounds. And yet I have yet to hear about the widespread injuries occurring at these federal facilities where razor wire fences have been installed. Listen, if the Biden administration was worried about Border Patrol agents being injured with razor wire or what have you, well, he could have ordered the completion of the border wall that Trump started to build back in 2017. But he didn't. No, instead, Biden's been way too busy trying to protect the border between Russia and Ukraine. Forget about our border. He's been trying to protect the border of Ukraine here. And with that being the case, clearly we need new leaders here in America who are ready to fulfill their oath of office by spending more time protecting our borders against enemies, both foreign and domestic. Well, thankfully, we still have some decent leaders here in Texas who are fighting for the security of our state. For example, it was yesterday evening when Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton posted the following, and I quote, "The Supreme Court's temporary order allows Biden to continue his illegal effort to aid the foreign invasion of America. The destruction of Texas border barriers will not help enforce the law or keep American citizens safe. This fight is not over, and I look forward to defending our state's sovereignty." That's right, our AG, Ken Paxton, is preparing to do everything in his power to fight against these globalists who are actively facilitating the invasion of the U.S. Texas Governor Greg Abbott also assured us that he's going to continue to defend our state's constitutional authority, which is to protect our borders. With this as the goal, there are many who are wondering if Texas is going to secede from the United States of America. Others are speculating that this is about to turn into another civil war. For example, Louisiana Congressman Clay Higgins just posted the following statement on X, and I quote him, "My thoughts are that the feds are staging a civil war and Texas should stand their ground." Wow. Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. And as this situation continues to unfold, I just encourage every Christian to pray for the state of our nation. And while I truly believe in the mission of being compassionate Christians who are ready to receive the huddled masses, we must also realize that there are globalists who are clearly funding an invasion of our nation, under the guise of helping military-aged males to seek asylum here in America. And with that being the case, we ought to be praying for leaders and legislators and judges who are ready to defend the United States, and yes, against our enemies, both foreign and domestic. And that's the main point of human government. It's to punish those who are breaking the laws. Oh, don't take my word for it. This is what Paul wrote in Romans chapter 13. There he declares, "Whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil." Do you want to be unafraid of the authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For he is God's minister to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is God's minister, an avenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. From this, we can see that the primary purpose of human government is to punish those who are breaking the law. Sadly, our government is more interested in rewarding the lawbreakers, and yes, this includes the illegal immigrants who are coming to America, for handouts. With that being the case, let's pray for political leaders who will remember that their job is to protect law-abiding citizens from the lawbreakers. And not only that, but let's also pray that our judges would get back to the business of punishing criminals. And as we show our support for these conservative sort of leaders who are ready to defend our country against criminals, well, we can rejoice in knowing that this is just another way that we can fight the good fight of faith, and all for the glory of God.